Yo, what up, y'all? Y'all know who this is, man. This is your man, Woo the House Cat, hanging out with Bill Staxx, the Bill Staxx podcast. You heard? Check them out.
Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Woo.
And that was probably the only time I've ever got caught. In 25 years, I did. That's the only time I got caught.
Is there any other major situations that stand out in your mind that happened around that time?
Well, yeah, the entire life is a major situation. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. You know, you lose friends. You know, you I've had many people. I don't want to say many; it's an exaggeration, but I've had a few die with me. Heroin overdoses. Candy got her hands cut off in Highbridge Park because she used to rob tricks. You know, she taken to
How did
Highbridge
that?
Park.
Walk me
Well,
through that situation. That sounds like
well,
a
there
wild
was there was there
situation.
was there was there was a really good looking white girl. Well, there was a couple of them. One of them was Tisha, who was the best friend of mine. The other one was Candy, and Candy had a habit of taking Johns into hallways because back in the days you go into the hallways of the buildings, and if you go to there was a place where the mailboxes were, and then you go keep walking to the back of the hallway, and typically there were stairs that went upstairs for the tenants to go upstairs, and under the stairs it was empty. You could do whatever you wanted back there. So that's where you really smoked the crack and did the drugs. And she would take the Johns under the stairs or out the back door to the back alley where the tenants would take the garbage, and it was closed off alley. And as she's sucking them off, she would go through their pockets. And a lot of time these guys are drunk and they're not really paying attention to what's going on. They're enjoying what she's doing, but meanwhile she's got her hands in your pockets. Candy became infamous for that. Um, and I guess she did it to the wrong dude, and they caught her. They took her to High Bridge Park, which was huge crack park back then. They chained her to a tree and they hacked her hands off. So that's what happened to Candy.
And
So
she survived.
no, she hacked her. They hacked her hands over. She bled to death. She died.
Oh,
They found her
wow.
chained to a tree. She was chained to the tree, and they waxed her. They chopped her hands off, and she was dead. Yeah, so things like that are common in that life. My best friend Tisha, like I explained, she was an amazing girl from Jersey. She was beautiful, and she died of HIV on a mattress, Highbridge Park. The last thing I said to her was, "I'll see you tomorrow." She went to sleep on the mattress, and when I went to get her the next day, she was rock hard. She was done. So things like that happen in the life. You OD, and if somebody's ODing, you're nervous, you're high, you leave them, and they die. That's just the life, man.
And that's why they changed the law that you can call the police now and you won't get in trouble.
Absolutely. That's exactly why they changed the law, because a lot of times you're smoking crack and you're doing dope, and the person next to you starts to OD, and you panic because you don't want to get charged with murder. You don't want to, be next to this person and they die. Now you have to explain to the cops, and you don't want to go through all of that. So you run, and you don't worry about the person. You don't save the person. You let them die. And a lot of times that happened, brother. A lot of times that happened. I could go through a couple stories where people died on steps in tenements because they OD, or in apartments, or burnt to death because they're smoking crack and something lit a fire, and you know they burned to death in the apartment. It is what it is, brother.
Was there a lot of drug dealers that were like hurting addicts back then, like torturing them and doing crazy stuff, like the drug dealers doing it to the
You know,
crackheads and things like that?
No, back in the old days, man, drug dealers had a code back in the old days. The old Harlem drug dealers, from what I remember when I was a kid, they had a code. Those old dudes, they wore suits and ties. There was no hanging out on corners. There was no, it was different back then. They had, I don't want to say morals because at the end of the day, you're a drug dealer. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to say they had morals. And again, that makes no sense. You're a drug dealer, but nowadays they don't care. Back in the days, if you were a chick that was pregnant, drug dealers would tell you to get off the block. They wouldn't sell to you. And if they caught somebody selling to you, the person that sold it to you would get it. You don't sell the pregnant women. You don't sell the children. If drug dealers back in the day knew I was trying to stay clean and they hadn't seen me in like 2 months and I had just come out of a rehab and they knew that I was trying to stay clean, they tell me get the fuck off the block. Yo, I had another name back in the days. It wasn't Woo, and they didn't use Marc. I used another name. And they would say, yo, so and so, get the fuck off the block. Get the fuck off the block. We ain't giving you shit. Get the fuck out of here. So back in the days, there was a code. Were there rules? Obviously, the streets have rules. Cop and go. You don't hang out in front of the building. You cop what you got to cop, and you get the fuck out of here. But they weren't putting their hands on you. That didn't happen unless you snitched on them. You calling the cops on one of them, then they catch you. It is what it is. But nah, I can't remember in 25 years ever having a drug dealer even try to, you know, nah, not
And
at
then
all.
things
Not at all.
change, right? Then now drug dealers start selling to kids and start
Now they,
selling to pregnant women and
yeah, absolutely. This younger generation has no code. Not again. How can you have code in the world of drugs? I understand people don't understand that, but the streets, especially at that level, because that being a drug addict is possibly the lowest you can go in the street life. Like where else you gonna go? Most of them were, sleeping outside. They're HIV positive. I can't tell you how many people I know that HIV positive. HIV positive. You sleep in cardboard boxes. You sleep in wherever you can find a place to sleep. So it's the lowest you can actually go in the street life. But there is a code. And you don't steal somebody's drugs. You don't. There's rules. Nowadays, there are no rules. I don't know how drug addicts act now. I'm clean, but the younger generation doesn't care who they sell to. They don't care about shooting up a park with his children. They don't care. You never did that back in the
setting
days.
a homeless person on
You
fire.
you never did that back in the days. If the block caught you shooting up an area and there was children, then they're gonna get you. You ain't gotta worry about the cops. The block is gonna get you. Why? Because drug dealers got kids too. How did that wasn't one of their kids that was in the park playing. Most drug dealers didn't live where they hustled, but that doesn't mean that where they did live that their kid wouldn't be in a park playing. So it was a different time and it was a different era. There were different rules. Nowadays, I couldn't be a drug addict nowadays. There's knuckleheads out there. There's knuckleheads out there.
Congratulations on your sobriety, man. I
Thank
I,
you,
I
brother.
got sober too a while back, and my life's all
Thank you.
totally different. Totally
Totally
different.
different, man. You understand then. You understand. But I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
where did your life go from there?
Um, After I got clean, I married my first wife and I kept using. I married my second wife and I kept using. And the woman I'm with now, I stopped uh shortly before I met her. A couple years before I met her, I decided to stop using. And the woman I'm with now, is an amazing person. She understands that I'm an addict because I, to this day, I help other addicts, get clean. I've never stopped helping addicts. She is an amazing person. But I went through two marriages. Um, I went through bankruptcy. I went through homelessness again. Um, again the divorces. Life now is amazing, bro. But it took a while before I got to the point where I wanted to get clean. You know.
What do you think it was? Do you think it was that you were trying, like, I could take care of this and do this and function?
Well, I I'm a know-it-all by nature, right? Um, I always want to do things my way, and I was abused as a kid, sexually and physically. I was abused as a kid, and I was also bullied. I didn't start fighting until I got to be 15. When I was 14, yeah, I guess it was about 15. When I was 14 on down, I didn't want to fight. I wasn't a fighter. I was afraid. Like, I remember as a kid in elementary school, my pop used to have to pick me up after school because I was getting bullied. I really didn't want to fight. And that's because I used to get abused at home. And I used to walk around with a little stuffed dog. And I used to just want to hang out with my stuffed dog. I'm an only child. Um, I will. I was raised as an only child. Let me clarify that. I used to want to walk around my stuffed dog and play with my toys and just be to myself because I found that if I stayed to myself, I wouldn't get burnt, I wouldn't get bit, I wouldn't get beat up like I used to get. So until I was 14, up until the time I was 14, I was really fearful. I was a fearful little kid. I used to shake uncontrollably because I was getting brutalized. And was getting molested. So after the age of 14, when the anger built up, I I it was a situation where the abuser went to abuse me some more, and I grabbed whatever item they were using to abuse me with, and it wrapped around my hand, and I didn't do it purposely. I was putting my hands up to kind of shield my face, and it inadvertently wrapped around my hand, and I grabbed it, and at that moment I realized that I can stop the pain, um, at least for the moment, right? And I took the item out of the person's hand, and I became the abuser, and I abused the person for many, many years after that. In fact, I abused a couple of them for many, many years after that. But the anger wouldn't stop, right? The anger would just well up in me to the point where anybody at any given time, for any given reason, was just going to catch my anger. However, I gave it to you, it was going to come out. Whether you beat my ass after that or whether I beat you, it did. I'm just fighting you. So the drugs, when I discovered, I was introduced to drugs by a friend's mom. I moved into her house at 17 with my childhood girlfriend that will probably see this episode because I still talk to her. And we moved into her house, and her. I didn't know that the mother was a cocaine dealer in Bergenfield, New Jersey, and she used to sell to the Bergenfield Police Department. So they let her get away with it. And her boyfriend at the time, his name was Butch, and Butch was her runner. Her name was Kuka, and Kuka would sell coke to the Bergenfield Police Department back in the 80s. Um, and she had some white powder on a glass. One day she brought it in the bedroom, and I didn't know what it was. And she had a little left, I guess, and she said, "Here, try this." And she handed it to me, and I sniffed it, and that was my first introduction to cocaine, and I fell in love with it. And what it did was it stopped the pain, right? As I felt angry, I would sniff some coke, and it stopped the pain. It didn't really stop it. We know it doesn't stop it, but you think it stops it. It numbs
Subsides
you.
it.
It
Yeah.
subsides it, absolutely. It numbs you to the point where you're not feeling it as long as you're high. So I kept getting high because I didn't want to feel the anger, if that answers your question. It's a long
I
answer.
I used to say, I'm not an addict. I don't want to stop. If you
Oh,
don't want to stop, you
absolutely.
don't have a problem,
Absolutely.
right?
My only problem came when I stopped, when I ran out of drugs. As
Yeah,
long as I
that
had
was
drugs, I never had a problem.
yeah. That's the way I looked at it too.
That's yeah. If that answers your question, right?
So when do you get like really introduced to the motorcycle club lifestyle?
Uh, about
Besides
13
the
years ago. About
besides the
13. No. Besides the time in the Bronx,
yeah.
about 13 or 14 years ago, I got introduced to the motorcycle club lifestyle. There was a club in Connecticut that will remain nameless. I went to meet up with them to get a bike from them. Um, and they had patches on when I went to pick up this particular bike. I went to see the bike and I bought it from them, and I inquired about their club because I gravitated towards their patch. And I became a member of that club. After prospecting and on and on and on, I became a member of that club, and my wife became vice president of their social club. And I will always credit them with introducing me to motorcycle clubs. I won't give their name out; they know who they are. But that's where I got started with the motorcycle club. That's where I was introduced to the lifestyle with that.
That's where I'm from, Connecticut.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
checked.
yeah, yeah. So
You know them. You know them. If I tell you who they are, you
yeah,
know
no,
them.
I already can figure out probably who it is.
Yeah.
So you become a member, but what was that process like? Do you just go to get a bike? I'm sure you don't just go up and say, "Hey, I want to be a member." It's just
No,
that
no, no.
easy. Like,
So we went to Connecticut. They, for whatever reason, they had me meet them at a car dealership that was closed. I think it was a Sunday. I don't remember. Or after hours. So we met at the car dealership so I could check out the bike. I checked out the bike. I wanted to buy it, but they came in their cuts. Two of them came in their cuts. And they had their motorcycle, their big crest and on and on and on. And when I saw it before they left, I asked about, say, hey, what is that? And they explained that that was their club. And I said, oh, how do you get to be a member? Out of curiosity. It was no more than curiosity. And they didn't answer me. Um, I think it was a couple of months after that, I got a call from one of them that said, hey, do you want to come up and watch a fight? It was a pay-per-view fight. Do you want to come up and watch a fight with your wife? And I said, sure. And I went up and I hung out at their clubhouse with them and I watched the fight. It was a good time. And after that, I didn't hear from them for a while. And they called me back. And I think it was a barbecue they invited me to. We come up and I hung out at the barbecue and we sort of became friendly. It had nothing to do with the club. It was just they invited me and my wife up and we hung out. And shortly after that, the second meeting, they asked me if I wanted to prospect for that club. And I was excited. And I said, sure, I'd love to. Because again, I loved the patch. I loved the way it looked. I loved the way it looked on that vest. And that was my entry. That was the gateway to me entering into the motorcycle world. Or the club world, not the motorcycle world, the club world.
Did you find prospecting a hard ordeal, or was it kind of
Which
easy?
time?
Did you
Which I've been a
this time
prospect like four times.
for the same club?
No, not at
No.
all.
Yeah.
This time, the first time, they didn't make it hard. It was, you had to learn the rules of their club. You had to learn what their patch meant. You had to learn the different members that had passed away for that club. The dates they passed away and who found the club, things like that. But they didn't make it hard. There was no scrubbing toilets. There was no, you would do what they asked you to do. Hey, Lou, can you go to the store or can you do this? Or it was light stuff. It was minor. So it was enjoyable. Like I enjoyed it. It was fun. They're a great group of people, man. To this day, my wife and I still are very tight with a lot of them. A lot of them. They're amazing people, man, to this day. Um, so prospecting was fun. I enjoyed it. I
So
enjoyed it.
you stay in that club. How long do you stay in that club, and do you gravitate towards another club after this?
I stayed with them about 3 years. I think it was about 3 or 4 years. I think it was 3 years. I don't really remember exactly. Yeah, 3 or 4 years, 3 years, whatever it was. And I remember being in a clubhouse. We were at another club's clubhouse in Connecticut because they're again a Connecticut club, and I was the only New York member. So I would have to go to meetings, go to parties, go to rides, go to runs. My wife and I had to drive to Connecticut all the time. Um, and I remember we went to an event at another club's house in Bridgeport. Um, and I saw a club walk in that had a cut that I had never seen before. And I inquired as to what that cut was because I had never seen it before. I had never seen it in New York. I had never seen it in Connecticut. And I said, who are those guys? I said to my sergeant. My sergeant said, stay away from those guys. They're trouble. And I remember they had a diamond on their chest, right? They had the cut with the diamond. And when he said that, something clicked in my mind and said, if that's trouble, that's where I want to be. And I left it alone. I didn't ask any more questions. And I think I did ask what the different patches were, what they meant that were on their cuts, because they were different than ours. And a lot of the people in my club didn't know, right? But that was my introduction to the club I later went on to be a member of, right? So shortly after that, the club that I was in, the politics were kicking up and it was becoming a pain in the neck for me and my wife to continuously drive to Connecticut all the time. So the charter started to get smaller and smaller and a lot of nonsense going on and yeah, I was a New Yorker and they're Connecticut folks, and I didn't think they really liked me too much because I was a New Yorker. Um, so I left that club. And I said to myself, I want to become a member of the club that I saw. So I
So
got on Facebook.
give me a rundown on how you leave the club. Do you walk in and say, "Here's my patches"? Like, do you?
No, how I left. There was a meeting, church, and I forgot what happened at the meeting. I don't really remember the details, but I remember me saying, you know what, I quit. and I took off my patches, my vest, and I just gave it back to them. And my wife said she was the VP of the social club at the time, and obviously, if I leave, she's gonna leave. She turned in her vest, and I just walked away, and that was it. End of conversation. None
Maybe
of my
on
clubs
rare
will,
circumstances, the girl will be like, "See ya," right?
yeah, maybe, but my wife she gets involved because I'm involved. She loves motorcycles. She has her license. She loves motorcycles, but the club thing really isn't her. She does it because I do it. If I didn't do it, she wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
So she wasn't gonna stay without me.
you're the probably the fourth person that I've heard that from, that their significant other is involved with the club as well, and they joined the support club or whatever.
Absolutely. She did it because I was doing it. It gave us time to spend more time together.
Are you intrigued about being a 1%er? Are you like, damn, this is what I want to do? Is it a lot different?